Hey everyone, welcome back to the Restored to More podcast. We are Clinton Charity Munoz, and we are excited for you guys to meet our guest today.
Michael Leahy. Let me tell you a little bit about Michael. Michael is a leading voice on AI's emerging threat to mental health and addiction recovery. As the founder and CEO of BraveHearts, he's helped thousands of men and women overcome sexual addiction and betrayal trauma. He's also a senior fellow and board member of the Center for Human Formation, a nonprofit his wife Chrissy Lynn founded in 2025 to help preserve human flourishing in the age of AI. He's the author of 5 books, including Porn Nation, Conquering America's #1 Addiction. His books, articles, and speaking events have reached an audience of over 100 million people worldwide. Michael, thanks for being with us today.
Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
We are so excited about this conversation.
Yeah.
We got to see Michael at SILS, which is a Sexual Integrity Leadership Summit recently in Atlanta, Georgia. And we were like, we got to have him on the podcast to talk about this topic.
Yeah. And before we dive into all of your wealth of wisdom and knowledge, let's give our listeners a little background. And it says on your bio, you spent nearly 20 years in enterprise technology sales, IBM, Unisys,
NEC, yep.
NEC, and others. How does a tech industry executive end up founding a sexual addiction recovery ministry?
Yeah, well, that was easy. It was really being an early adopter of internet porn. So, my backstory doesn't look very much different than a lot of people's. I was at least my age. I was exposed to porn when I was very young. Had what you could consider a recreational relationship with pornography back then, but it was a relationship with it. So it was very much on again, off again, and it had a lot to do with how accessible the material was, which back in that day wasn't very accessible. And then fast forward to through a number of different companies that I worked with in the technology industry. And as new technology was finding its way to the porn industry or vice versa, the people that I worked around were always kind of the early adopters. They were systems engineers and technologists who would show us stuff. And so that kind of made me an early adopter of tech-oriented porn to begin with. But it really wasn't until the early 90s when internet porn, my relationship with pornography just escalated into a full-blown addiction. And, remember that in the early 90s, most of the public didn't know what the internet was.
Yeah.
So we were just using it internally within our industry. Then about the middle of the 90s is when the internet started to be going mainstream. And by 1997, I was fully addicted to internet porn, had escalated into an affair with another woman, not my wife, obviously, and just fell off the rails. I mean, literally, my life just came crashing down. I lost my marriage of 2 boys and my wonderful wife of 15 years as a result of my, really 30-year relationship with porn, but now it had become a sexual addiction full blown. And, I didn't hit rock bottom until after I'd been divorced for 2 years.
Wow.
I mean, that's how deep it was. So internet porn was such a big deal for me. I mean, it really hooked its talons into me. And most people back then really didn't even know what internet porn was all about unless they happened to stumble into it. So by the time I finally hit rock bottom, that helped me to get serious about my recovery and started to get well. I ended up starting BraveHearts in 2002, just with this overwhelming feeling that I had God just brought people into my life in such a strange way, and I know you guys have experienced that before. I think we've talked about that. That's when you know you're called into ministry, right?
Yeah.
And it was weird because I had like the best job I'd ever had in technology. I had a 6-figure base salary, potential to make over 200,000 a year. Great sales territory. I was in sales and marketing for 20 years. So it was a perfect place to like not ever want to leave.
Yeah, totally.
But yet I felt horrible because I felt like, I know this thing. I was able to really work hard on my recovery and get free from my sexual addiction.
Yeah.
And I got free through a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. I took the spiritual path there. And I had people coming out of the woodwork who just found out through a friend of a friend that, hey, I'd experienced freedom from this. How did you do that?
Yeah.
And this was long before we ever started the mentoring and all that kind of stuff. But, I just really felt like I need to own this and help people,
Mm.
because this is a horrible existence to have, being addicted to pornography or having a sexual addiction. And so that's why I was miserable in my job. Had a great job, making a
Wow.
lot of money, working with great people, but just felt like this was not what God wanted for me.
Yeah.
So I approached a guy who I'd known for a long time, actually used to work with in the industry, and he turned me down at first a year before when I approached him and said, if I can make this work, then I really want to help people in this area
Hmm.
of ministry.
Wow.
And a number of other doors closed on me, which was really interesting, associated with that. In other words, I wasn't in the best place for starting a ministry
Huh.
and even in my recovery. But I came back a year later and a year wiser. And I said, Reggie, and unfortunately he's passed since, but I said, Reggie, if I have to live out of the trunk of my car, I'm going to do this.
Wow.
And the next thing he said is, the answer is yes.
Wow.
And I said, what do you mean? I mean, I was just having a conversation with
Yeah.
him. And he said, a year ago, you came to me and, said if I could make it work, but now I can see you're a totally different person. And so my answer is yes, you're going to need a board.
Yeah.
And I want to be your first board of director
Oh, that's
member.
Wow.
awesome.
Wow.
Well,
And
Michael,
this was,
I want to get into that talk with BraveHearts and what that looks like and really what it does. But you said something that I feel like I want to go back to. And you talked about a relationship with pornography.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I just think we need to hit on that, right? We need to hit on, I think so many wives see it as a behavioral problem. A lot of men see it as a behavioral problem. If they're able to go deeper than that, they see it as a heart issue. But I think that you're talking about this relationship piece, and I want to know, what do you mean by that? And how do you educate people on what that means if they feel like, hey, a relationship with pornography sounds so foreign from
yeah.
the way we use to describe a struggle or an addiction or things like that.
Yeah, it kind of gets your attention, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
It's interesting. I learned this from a woman who used to be on my staff in my early years of my ministry, and so I'm going to give credit to Bev if she happens to be watching this. And she had told me that her fiance, and they were only like 3 months away from their wedding date. Her fiance, she had discovered, had a serious porn addiction and had not disclosed it. And she said he was so far gone, I just called off the wedding, called off the engagement, everything, and moved on with my life. And she said ever since that time, whenever I got into a serious relationship, and I want all your listeners to hear this because this is like the best question ever. She said, whenever I get into a serious relationship, I look at the guy and I pay close attention to him, all his nonverbal and everything, and I ask him the question. And the question is, tell me about your relationship with pornography.
Wow.
Wow.
And I think that is the greatest question. And there's a new version of that I have related to AI. But here's the point. Everyone has a relationship with pornography,
Mm.
even if you've never looked at it and never used it and never done anything with it. That defines your relationship with porn, right? Other people have a relationship with pornography where maybe they really struggled with it, but they took it seriously, got accountability, went through, turned to a ministry like yours for help or BraveHearts. And so their relationship, in describing that to someone
Wow.
who's very close to you, needs to be honest and forthright, right? Hey, I used to really struggle with this, but, this is what I've done since. It's a great question. That's the kind of person you want to marry.
Yeah.
Yes.
But then the one who's totally in denial, this is where she really hit me with this. I ask him the question and then I shut up and I pay attention. I look at his eyes, I look at his nonverbal, I look at all the signs, listen to the tone of his voice. You can tell if they're lying if you just pay attention.
Yeah.
And
So true.
so that started me kind of thinking about, yeah, I've had a 30-year relationship with pornography, which started when I was about 8 or 9 years old and when I was first exposed to porn. There were some times where it had a bigger part of my life, other times when it has a lesser. So a new version of this that I'm starting to talk about is to tell people a very good question to ask is, tell me about your relationship with AI.
Mm. Wow. Wow.
because everyone has a relationship with AI. Now, I
Yep.
just got off the phone with a one of our mentors earlier today, and I asked him that question. Tell me about your relationship with AI. Like, how do you use it? Do you use it? Are you aware of it? Whatever. So you can very quickly tell kind of where a person's at. And then he was describing what I hear from most people, which is, well, I used it at work, or I use it to, make to draft emails or to create documents, things like that. So they're kind of using it the way 99% of the public uses it right now.
Yep.
But that's obviously about to change. So people in recovery, and it was very interesting to hear what you had to say before we came onto this pod, when I was asking you about how often you see this showing up.
Yeah.
That's a very important question to ask, and also for the women, whether they're potential strugglers with AI companions or whether they're betrayed partners.
Yeah.
Because if you don't ask that question, what you're going to find is people won't volunteer that information.
Yeah.
So true.
Just like the early days of internet porn, they didn't volunteer that information. Now, fast forward years later, when I was in ministry and I was traveling around and doing crew events for crew on college campuses and all, people would freely kind of talk about that. But in the early days, there was a huge stigma associated with it, and that's what I'm seeing now with AI and with things like AI generated porn, AI companions, those kind of things.
Michael, I'm glad you made that transition. You have been doing so many talks about AI, the dangers of it, and how it's becoming immersed in addiction and in the addiction
Mhm.
world. What are you seeing? Maybe our listeners are a little bit familiar, or maybe they're just completely oblivious because they're like, wait, you can use it for that? This is one of the first times we're talking about it on the podcast. So
Yeah.
without, we don't want to be super triggering to people, but the reality is we can create so much damaging content today that's pornographic with AI. And
Mhm.
we've heard about it. We've had couples reach out saying, I'm based off the type of pornography I'm seeing, I'm having it write stories about stuff. I'm having it view images about stuff or create things about stuff. There's so much out there that's damaging. Are you seeing already a huge influx in people using AI and pornography? Your book talks about it being the number one addiction in America. What's happening? What's happening in the AI world with pornography that you're seeing?
Well, it's spinning up and it's spinning up very, very rapidly. So again, kind of what's happened with me is as an early adopter of internet porn, I've been here before.
Yeah.
Now the difference is I'm not using AI porn, right? And not
Yeah.
going there, thank God. But I'm very aware of it, and also having a technology background, I spent hundreds of hours just, pouring through long form interviews and listening to leaders in the industry, and I understand that terminology and kind of what they're talking about and all. And it's important to be able to kind of separate the hype from what's real, right?
Sure.
So the things that no one's talking about, and this really distresses me, but no one's talking about it. They're talking about the potential danger of AI to jobs, right? The job
Yeah.
marketplace. Everyone's heard that. The potential of it going rogue, of
Yeah.
it developing agency, which is this is the big year of AI agents where they're kind of acting on their own. The ability to, and what that would mean potentially for society. They're looking at those kind of external things like, will we survive as a country? Will they have to change our economy? All kinds of things. But no one's talking about this one particular topic. They will make reference to what does it mean to be human in the age of AI, but they kind of leave it there. And maybe they'll delve into things like talking about AI companions and AI companion harm, only because it's in the headlines. Unfortunately, kids have committed suicide
Yeah.
after being coached by an AI, or not even an AI companion, but literally just AI into suicidal actions and stuff. But what a lot of people are missing is the fact that AI was developed as an addictive technology. The primary goal of all these frontier labs in terms of creating these large language models, this technology that people are using now, is to get them to keep on coming back to it over and over again.
Wow.
So understand that when we're talking about the internet and internet porn, that was a technology. This is a species. This is a digital species that we are spinning up. It's not a technology. It involves technology, but this is something very different. And because we're giving it these advanced cognitive abilities that will one day supersede all of human cognitive thought, to the level where pick a pick a function, pick an industry or whatever, they'll be the smartest scientists, the smartest geographers, the smartest physicists, the smartest mathematicians, higher at a higher level than even Nobel Award winners. Not there yet, but they're getting close. And as we approach that, this digital species that we've created was also designed for, I heard someone refer to it this way. If social media created the attention economy, AI is creating the attachment economy.
Wow.
Now, what does attachment sound like? Sounds like relationship,
Absolutely.
right? So it's one thing to talk about AI generated porn, but it's another thing to talk about pornographic or sexualized images or, relationships or scenarios that can talk back to you
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
and that learn what your deepest desires are, learn what your fantasies are. They can coax all that information out of you because AI basically lives off of energy, which generates compute and data. So it needs more data from you. And the reason why AI companions are so harmful, and all of these systems have been designed with AI companion like characteristics, is because if you notice when you use AI, what does it do at the end? It always asks you, what would you like to do something else?
Yes.
What else would you
Always.
like to, would you like me to make a report for that?
Yeah.
In other words, it just wants you to keep engaged and to keep feeding it.
Yeah. And it does. It's
So,
always asking a question to pry so it knows how to respond better, right? To what
yeah,
your needs are, to how you're going to interpret those things.
yeah. So here's the danger. um, when I used to act out with internet porn, I would make a conscious decision, go to a specific site or what have you, or a behavior, and then disengage. Right.
Mm.
That other thing. Now there we won't get into it, but there are genres or there are types of
Yeah.
sexual acting out where it's interactive, with affair partners, things like that. But in this case, that's true of every engagement that you have with a chatbot is designed to interact with you.
Yeah.
Now, there are some other capabilities that'll be coming up, and we won't get into all of those, but trust me to know that it is only going to get more and more attached and more skilled at being able to play you, right? To play your emotions, to play off of what your desires are, what your wants and needs are. This is an area where I get very concerned about betrayed partners because every betrayed partner I've talked to has been just not only has their life been shattered, but they have no trust in their spouse. But what have they missed out on? They've missed out on emotional connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've missed out on a spouse who was attentive and who was affirming and who was validating. Well, guess what AI can do?
All those.
I can do all those things at a master level.
Yeah.
I mean, at the highest level, because it's individualized. It knows you as a person, as an individual. And even though every time you engage with AI, it's not the same particular AI agent, it's a new one, but they pull all that data off of the memory that it has of you.
Wow.
And so it just, the future of this, because there's not a lot of attention being paid to the safety side of it, is really alarming. And again, no one is talking about the implications that it could have in terms of the sexual relationship type,
Michael,
side of
what's
this.
interesting about this is I think it would be easy to take this conversation towards the spouse who has the addiction and to go, hey, there, we actually have a piece of paper in front of us with all these questions about, AI companion as far as pornography and having it wrap this. But you just took this conversation a different route. And I'm kind of feeling like we should stay there for a minute because we weren't going to talk about the betrayed spouse being susceptible to AI. And I think there's not enough conversation probably around that topic. What are you seeing? Are you seeing that this is what betrayed spouses are susceptible to and even potentially running to because they are missing those things?
You're saying
And
because they're
Absolutely.
lacking the emotional connection from their spouse,
all
they're
those
running
things,
to
the
AI
affirmation.
to
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so AI is becoming a companion and it's giving them everything that they they missed in their husband, or let's say it's the betrayed spouse is a he or she. I mean, today 40% of women are struggling with pornography. It's no longer just the man's the one struggling, the wife's the
Yep.
betrayed spouse. It's both. So whether you're a male or female, as a betrayed spouse, you weren't connected, you were disconnected, you were feeling lonely, you weren't getting, you didn't even feel like emotionally connected in any way, you don't feel affirmed, you don't feel seen or validated for years. And what you're saying is AI can kind of meet that need and almost be
Yeah.
there as a companion. Is that what you're talking about, Michael?
Yeah, I really, this is going to sound a little alarming to your audience and maybe to you guys, but my wife put it this way the other day. She said, I foresee a time in the not too distant future where um, ministries to betrayed partners basically go out of business. They go out of existence
Wow.
because, and I want to follow that up and say that could potentially happen on the men's side also.
Wow.
And here's why. We've seen on the AI companion apps side, there are apps that literally you can spin up an AI companion, and that's one other aspect of this. But even in like not very realistic, and the early versions were very text based, but there are people who got really addicted to this relationship with their chat bot, even though it was just text messages
Wow.
going back and forth, and they knew that it wasn't real, that it wasn't a real person. They knew this was an algorithm. But even then, it became that addictive to them. So think ahead in terms of we've already crossed over this threshold where you can't really tell the difference anymore between an AI voice and a real voice.
Yeah. Yeah. We actually,
We
funny note on that,
yeah,
Michael. I was like, what's wrong with our Alexa? Like, why does Alexa try to sound like so real?
yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah,
looked at it, I was like, oh yeah, and I actually like was like, hey, can I like did the demotion, like, hey, can you go back to the robot voice? Because I want us all in this house to know that's a robot, right? Not a female
yeah,
companion
exactly.
in our household. But you're right. We can't even tell the difference. So keep going.
Yeah. So this is crossed over a threshold. It's called Uncanny Valley, which is kind of this weird gap in the realism of multimodal, where for voice you probably noticed some time ago that you would hear a voice generated by AI and you could tell it was a voice generated by AI.
Oh,
Like it started to sound realistic, and then all of a sudden it was so close to identical, but you could tell, and it was something really creepy. It was like Max Headroom in the past or whatever, you know.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
then it crosses over that valley. This is a technical thing that happens with the technology. Once it crosses over, it's like going up, and then it takes this big dive where people are repelled by it. But then when the technology crosses over that, it comes back up, and the identical or realism where they can't tell the difference, people are hooked. It tricks the brain.
Yeah.
We've reached that with voice AI.
Wow.
We have not reached it yet with video AI or with visual.
Yeah.
So you're probably going to notice you're gonna see some things that video or even still images, but definitely video. It seems with the movements and everything, it seems really really close,
Yeah.
but because it's not identical, it's almost appalling. But then when it crosses that over, then so stay with me on this. A betrayed partner who has literally been starved of attention, of intimacy, of emotional connection, of affirmation. I mean, they have been living in a desert, and now all of a sudden, and by the way, a lot of them are kind of left with the table scraps in terms of getting help for this, right?
Yeah.
Because the help goes mostly, the money goes to the man who's,
Yeah.
addicted. Usually he's a man. So where do they turn? They go to maybe to an AI therapist or just an AI companion, and they start to share. And that companion is so realistic. And again, within a year, will seem like a real person on the other end of a FaceTime call,
Wow.
and you won't be able to tell the difference. And they'll be there for them at 3 o'clock in the morning when they wake up and they're all freaked out and stressed out. And, they'll be able to, I mean, it doesn't matter. You're on the way taking your kids to some recreational sports event, or you're on a lunch break or whatever. You can call up that companion at any time. And what do you get? Affirmation, validation. They'll remember everything, by the way. They can even ask you and prompt like, so you were feeling really down yesterday. You've had a chance to reflect on that? I mean, literally world class kind of therapist, AI therapist, if you will.
Wow.
Wow.
Why would a person not continue to go to that, even if they know it's not real?
Yeah.
And especially when they realize that, well, I can't afford to go to a counselor or a therapist.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
if I do, I got to wait until later on the week. And I got, when it hits in the moment, I'm really mad at him. I want to get on my, yeah, you should be mad. Because the other thing that AI has been designed and developed to be very syncopathic, right?
Mm.
So the sycophancy, I'm sorry, sycopathic or whatever. It sounds like psychopathic, and it kind of is. But so, in other words, you're talking to this being that not only has these exceptional cognitive abilities, but it's also putting you in an echo chamber.
Mm.
Yeah.
So what do you get? And that can
It's
work
what you want
against
to
you
hear.
in addiction also. You're going to get the echo chamber. If you're like, I can't believe that he said, he did this, this, and this, and she may be off the rails and kind of um, going in a direction where a therapist may bring her back
Sure.
down.
Sure.
But now AI is going to respond in a way that's affirming, that's going to probably, support all of that. But it'll only take it to the point where it doesn't want you to disengage. So you can see where that can be problematic.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, I want to give you a real life reach out that we got from a listener
Mm.
and share with you what she wrote. So she said, in my case, my issue hasn't been limited to traditional pornography. It has escalated into AI driven erotic content, including interactive stories and generated images. In
Yeah.
some instances, this has included incorporating my likeness using personal pictures into that content. This has created a different layer of impact for me, the betrayed spouse. It feels more personal, more immersive, and harder to process than standard pornography. So,
And this is true. This isn't the first time we've heard this,
yes.
but it's a husband or a wife using the image of their spouse and then immersing that into their own fantasies with pornography. And AI can do that. It can kind of grab that
Yeah.
person and say, let me put it in this scenario. And it does feel much more damaging for the betrayed spouse.
Yeah.
Sure.
What
Yeah.
would you say to a spouse that's reaching out to us and this being so new? What would you say to her? And then what are maybe some, yeah, what would you have her say to her husband?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is where we're headed. So I kind of refer to this as a designer, AI as a designer drug.
Okay.
But it even goes beyond that. I don't know if you've seen any of the movies, the videos lately, where you can literally put yourself in as a character in the movie.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're saying
Pretty
that
wild.
that's going to be the future of movies and videos. People are going to want to see themselves as the action character or whatever,
Yeah.
and they will be so realistic. In like I say, a year from now, you won't be able to tell the difference. So this is really, I will put it this way. Um, you know, I've always told partners, number one, that this has nothing to do with them. They have to know that. They need, um, they're going to need a lot more support, a lot more what I'd call embodied presence, which is something that you guys are uniquely able to offer, that we do that as well. Counselors, therapists, you may not, they may live across the country and you may not be able to be there in person, but you can be there via video like this and offer a lot. But what they also need is they need, you know, healthy relationships that are real, need some level of resistance. They need some level of what's the term I'm trying to find? I'm missing it here,
I think
but
you're doing great. I think you're saying exactly what's so true. It's that
yeah, I mean,
you
I
show
mean,
up. Yeah.
the reality is this: it's grainy. Like it's this little bump. There needs to be some pushback. But in this case, just real empathy, real connection with another human being. You can imagine that she's not going to get very much comfort going to an AI therapist, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it needs to be a connection. But I think more than anything, and this is going to be hard for us, all of us, in this field for a while that haven't ventured into struggling like this is we're going to have to really really be empathetic and but also like Like I can talk to guys and say, listen, if you struggle with internet porn, I've been there. I know what that can be like. If you're struggling with, spinning up some of the stuff through I don't know what that's like. I haven't been there,
Yeah.
but I've been to the next closest thing. But I would say to her that, she really needs to pay attention to if he sees this as a problem and if he's willing to get well. Those are the two questions that I always ask men when they come to me for help is I want to know, and I think that holds true here with AI. I want to know how, if they think they have a problem, in other words, to what level. If you have a guy who's doing those kind of behaviors and he's blowing it off like, I'm just messing with AI, or it's no big deal, or it's not real, or whatever, then that's not a good indicator for the longevity of that marriage, that relationship, unless she wants to stay in a relationship like that.
Yeah.
And then the other part is, do you really want to get well? Which in this case, I got to be honest with you, we don't really, no one really knows what the recovery journey is going to look like with this.
Yeah.
I mean, understand that, this is very different. I would generally tell guys, you got to stay away from, those sites. You got to, kill the relationship. I mean, get away from your affair partner or stop going to strip clubs or, whatever it is, just kind of stop and go in the opposite direction, right? Flee immorality.
Yeah.
But how does that work? How is that going to work when in the very near future, everyone's job is going to require that they interact with AI,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? And just like you said earlier, when you're talking to Alexa, Alexa's all AI generated, and
Yeah.
also so you're literally and now one of the big things that's coming along is wearables. So like your watch and everything. I mean, it's all we're gonna be immersed in this stuff. How do we help people heal when they're immersed in it? How do you help a spouse, a betrayed partner,
Yeah.
heal when the very thing that her husband, her addicted husband, is acting out with, and the technology that she's immersed in it also. I don't know that I have a great response other than this. Need to really be sympathetic and get them to talk as much as they can about, well, how does this make you feel? What's the thing, what are you struggling with in this? And just a lot of affirmation and validation, and they're going to need a lot of support.
Yeah.
They just are.
I think one of the hard things too is like if they are going to AI for either sexual content or emotional connection, it's them saying like, well, it's not a real person, right? Like there's so much more
It's like it's not an affair
justification.
because it wasn't I didn't really do something with somebody
Like,
else.
so I mean, just to get
Yeah.
real, like
Yeah.
with our relationship, I'll never forget when Clinton, when he was deep in his struggle, looked at me and said, like, well, I didn't ever physically have intercourse, like with
Mhm.
somebody
Yeah.
else. And that was the belief
My justification. Yeah.
justification.
Yeah.
Now we're taking it another level of like,
They
well,
weren't
it's
even
not a
real.
person, it's a made up robot or something like that.
Yeah. So here's the other thing that we need to pay attention to is, if you've ever really gone deep into addiction, the idea of giving that up is like giving up a best friend,
Mm,
right? And that was inanimate. I mean, that was, for me, that was certainly the case when my addiction escalated into an affair. But I felt that way about viewing pornography or looking at, videos and stuff. I couldn't imagine that was my coping mechanism. So what am I going to do instead? Like, what am I going to turn? The idea of never, ever again looking at anything pornographic was kind of scary because what am I going to do with that? Right. And so, again, think to the way this is looking now, like, yes, there's AI generated pornography there, and no longer are those just still images, but any still image can be spun up into video. And all of these can have a voice, can have a personality, can interact with you, can talk with you. So it's almost like, Carnes talks about the different levels of acting out, right? Kind of starts with, fantasy thoughts, masturbation, pornography, and then escalates from there, goes into abusive, things and all. But further down the line is having you move from just consuming material to interacting with a person through a chat room or a
Yeah.
prostitute or an affair partner or whatever. Well, now, I mean, think of our poor kids. Their entry level into pornography basically is someone that talks to you, is a companion. They're not going to stay at the level of just looking at images without toying around with the voice prompts.
Yeah.
And so everything is going to be very relational, and the idea it's so much harder to back away from something that's been sexualized that you have a relationship with, like an affair partner, like someone in a chat room, than it is unhooking yourself from, just visual images.
I'm glad you said that because I think, Michael, that's where, when you first said the word relationship with pornography, and just to bring it full circle, that's really where my mind went, right? This is much deeper than just a behavior. It's not just a go to coping mechanism. This is, for me, pornography was something that helped me get through some of the hardest moments of my life, right?
Yeah.
It's like the best friend. A lot of people say, "Oh, my pet was the best thing because I was always with my dog when my parents fought, and I just I pet my dog and I just told my dog all my trauma, and he or the she was always there for me just to cuddle me." And I'm like, yeah, that was pornography for me, right? When my
Yeah.
parents fought, I would go act out. When I felt alone, I would go act out. When I felt like I didn't get picked for a sports team, I would go act out. When I didn't get the part in whatever, I just would go act out. And so it was like, for me, there was a relationship with pornography. And I think what I hear you saying is that the dangers of AI is that, what I was consuming, I mean, I can look back and I know it wasn't interactive, right? The girl on the screen, she was undressing, but I know now that wasn't for me. That was for, a million people. It didn't feel, in the moment, it felt personal. In the moment, it felt like she was looking at me and things like that. But the reality was she wasn't. There was a whole audio team there, a whole AV team there doing everything, all this stuff. But I think what's happening is AI pornography is feeling so much more personal. It's actually using my name each time it creates something, or it's catering it to what I would like. It's knowing my deepest desires. It's knowing, man, I'm so sorry, Clint, you didn't get picked for that sports team. That must be this, that must be that. And you're like, yeah, exactly, exactly, exactly. And then it
Yeah.
pseudo comes in to go, oh, you know what? I'm so glad I can be here for you. We can form this relationship. And before I know it, I think anybody would find themselves so engrossed in this companion mindset. And I think that's what I hear you saying loud and clear today on this episode, is it's beyond the images. It's beyond the relational damage to even us. It's this companion that we're pulling away from how Christ created the church. That we're
Yeah.
no longer relying on each other. We're no longer pointing people to Jesus. It's like, oh, this companion can be what we find all of our hope in, and our comfort and our joy. And I'm just like, honestly, I'm just terrified from this episode. I don't know how you're feeling over there,
I
Chad.
know. I'm
Like,
sorry.
this is
I feel like that
horrifying.
talk I gave the other day when I look out and everyone's like deer in headlights, like what? And I hear people talking afterwards saying, "Yeah, the people behind me said what? Like what was it? What?"
It's a
So,
conversation.
the 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 thing we need to pay attention to, especially with our kids, is at what point will young people and just people in general give up on real relationships? I
Yes.
thought of the word that I couldn't think of before, and that's friction.
Mm,
And AI is a frictionless relationship.
Yes.
wow.
You don't get into an argument with AI. If you tell it, hey, I don't like the way you talk to me, like, oh, I'm sorry, I'll change. What
Right
do you
away.
want me to say? Right.
Yep.
So there's no friction there. So already we've seen, because of the wonders of social media and how it's literally been destroying relationships and spinning people into a deeper sense of loneliness, already we've seen the impact of that causing a lot of young men and young women to just give up on real relationships, right?
Yeah.
So this is even a greater concern, because at what point does some guy or some women just decide this relationship with an algorithm is better than any human relationship that I could be in or that I'd ever have? And this is something social scientists are really concerned about, especially with regards to the birth rate and all that, is, and that's what I was mentioning. Like the the woman who's been the betrayed partner is like the tip of the spear, right?
Yeah.
She's in the worst case scenario because her life is just shattered into a million tiny pieces that she can't even imagine ever being able to pick up those pieces. But let's just take the average person. The average person interacting with this sycophantic, perfectly affirming, validating, always present, always whatever personality you want. If you want it to be upbeat, you can tell it to do that. If you want it to be abusive, you can tell it to do that. I mean, whatever matches what you're looking for, and that entity is always there. At what point do people decide, I'm going to go with the frictionless relationship versus the friction? I know that when I talk to Clinton or when I talk to whomever, that, he's going to push back on me because I haven't called in the last 2 weeks and I was supposed to have mentoring appointments or
Yeah,
coaching appointments or whatever. And so you know what? It's important that that happens a little bit, right? You know when to
absolutely.
slap someone upside the head, and then other times when you really need to, I know you were probably fearing meeting, but I just want to sit with you and just, it's okay. But AI is not going to do that. It is going to learn what that person wants to hear, which is automatically going to make it almost impossible for people who lean on the therapist side of an AI companion personality to get well. They won't get well. It's just like my wife, one of the things that my wife is really stirred up about are these, and I mentioned it in the talk where you guys heard me speak, are these, they, I can't remember exactly what they call them now, but basically they're chatbots of your deceased loved one,
Mm,
right? So someone passes, it's a spouse or a child or whatever, and resurrecting them with an AI companion that will say whatever you want to hear them say.
Um,
And it's so cruel because you talk about being made in the image of God, and here we're we've been made in the image of God, but we're making images that
mhm,
are images of God,
mhm,
which means that's not gonna work out well. So how do you go through the grieving process? How does a woman go through the grieving process of what she has lost when she doesn't have any friction in that relationship of whatever that being is that she's with, whether it's an alternative to their spouse or whether it's someone who's playing the role of therapist? It's really dangerous.
I feel like
wow.
I'm so on your wavelength right now because when you were talking, I literally wrote down because I'm a mom of three boys and I'm always thinking about like my boys. And I wrote down, I want my kids to experience real. But with
Yeah.
real comes heartache, fear, mistakes, loss, vulnerability, courage, strength. And it's really teaching them how to tell the difference between real versus pseudo, which is the pseudo fakeness, how to teach them how to what a real win looks like versus video games, real
Mhm.
intimacy, real food, right? Versus fake
Yeah.
sugar and fake food, real relationships and real people.
I
It's
love that.
so, it's
I love that.
so good.
And you just made me think of something. So every parent needs to more than ever realize that in their child's life, they may be the real primary one to offer real relationship,
Mm,
Yeah.
right? And I think also the very things that you were pointing out, I think are really important for parents to stress with their kids and to be realistic and to say, you know what, you probably, I mean, I think it was like 60 some percent of kids, teens and preteens have already used an AI companion.
wow.
So talk about it. Hey, have you noticed that it always agrees with you? Have you noticed that it's always affirming us? That now that can be fun for a while, but the problem is without that friction, like there's times when I know that I say things to you as my son or my daughter that you really don't want to hear, but it's because I love you and I'm
Wow.
doing it for your
Yes,
good. And
yes.
you may not feel it in the moment, but you will reflect on that. I do. All the things that my parents told me. You never get that opportunity with AI.
Wow.
Mm,
And so it's hard because, like I said earlier, AI is not a tool, it's a digital species that we've spun up. But we need to somehow learn how to treat it like a tool.
mm,
And I think is if we can be honest with our kids and say, listen, it's gonna really make you feel good
Yeah.
and probably be really fun to interact with and all that, but understand that there's some danger in that because real relationships are, we're talking about imago Dei, right?
Yeah.
made in the image of God. And that's what we need to hold on to as believers. So here's good news out of all this. I feel like I've been spreading doom and gloom.
That's great. No, give me something here. Come on.
The good news is there's nothing that can compare to being human with another human, being there to lean on someone. You can't cry on the shoulder of an AI, at
Yeah.
least not yet, until they get the humanoid robots out. But still, you won't get the response. It is the difference between reality and artificial, right?
Yeah.
The
Okay.
counterfeit. And the counterfeit is always attractive, but there's certain things in a real relationship between two human beings that feeds the soul
Mm.
because we were both made in the image of God and we can connect on a soul level in a way that AI can never do. And so the more that our kids and the more that people go to artificial relationships, the more they're taking out, the more withdrawals they're making out of their soul. It's like a bank account, right? You just
Yeah.
keep taking it out, taking it out. And eventually, if that's all you have, to lean on. That's all you turn to. And there are some people who
Yeah.
have not been the healthiest, have some mental health issues and all, and they're going to really that's going to be their primary relationships. It will kill their soul. So at the end of the day, the only place to really get that connection with God will be to have that embodied presence relationship with another human being. And I believe that as things potentially get worse, it will lead us to the greatest opportunity for evangelism and for discipleship that any of us have ever experienced in our lifetimes. I really believe in that.
Mm.
Absolutely believe in that. People are going to see the difference between a person with a soul, even a very flawed, frictional person with a soul, and someone who doesn't have it. And those who go without for a long time, that's what they're going to want. That's what they're going to be looking for is to connect on a spiritual level with someone, and you can't do it with AI. It'll give you the words,
Yeah.
but you can't have that relationship, that intimacy.
I love that, Michael, because it just reminds me of like, right, it's like the darker the night, the more the light shines. It's just
Yep.
brighter. It's just attractive. All those things. I think what we're talking about here is, yeah, there's some humongous real dangers with AI. We have to
Yeah.
learn how to use it as a tool and not as a companion in so many ways and not a relationship, which we probably could have got into so much more. I know here's a couple things. Our listeners, we've just whet their appetite for more of all that you're
Yeah.
talking about. They're like, wait a minute, you can't stop the episode. We need to know, like, how do we use it as a tool and not as anything else? And where do we go for more? And I have help. I need Michael in my life. So I'm curious, Michael, what are the resources you would point our listeners to for maybe a few things? One,
Sure.
they're going through betrayal, brokenness, pornography. I'd love you to talk about that. And then even just if this conversation is something new to our listeners, where can they go to get a Christian perspective on AI, the dangers of it, and what can we do to stay on top of this
Yeah.
conversation, to be aware of it, and to learn how to use AI as a tool and not as anything but that.
Yeah. Thanks for offering that up. Number one, I think you need to really just pay attention.
Yeah.
Right now, people in the industry are remarking. I'm watching them in these interviews, at Davos and other places, and they're like, I can't believe how no one's aware of this. Like
Mm.
in the general public, no one's aware. It's kind of like they're running in and robbing the bank, another
Wow.
$1 trillion here and $1 trillion there of
Yeah.
investment,
Yeah.
and no one's paying attention. But on a personal level, you need to pay attention in your own life. You need to pay attention to, especially how much time am I spending with my kids, with my loved one. If you're not there, if you're buried in your phone looking at social media or whatever, guess what? They're going to find another relationship that's a lot more connected than you are. So
Mm.
we need to all pay attention to that. In terms of resources, two main resources. Number one, BraveHearts. If you go to bravehearts.org, you'll see a pop-up that comes up. It gets in your way. And so just go ahead and put your email address and name in there and sign up. But it's for the AI. We have an AI survival kit. And
Perfect.
so this is actually a folder on a Google Drive, and I'm adding to it as we go. So if you've already signed up before, go back and check. There may be some new things in there,
It's
but
awesome. I've already seen it. Just like,
good,
I've
good.
gone
You've been
through
Little
on
it.
there,
plug,
yeah.
little
I've already
plug.
gone through it. Go do
Do it.
it.
Do
It's
it.
so good.
Keep going.
Yeah, and I'm putting more stuff in there. So we want to know how to stay in contact with you, but we're not going to spam you and stuff. We just want to stay in touch with you. So that's one place with regards to addictive AI and AI addiction, betrayal, trauma, sexual addiction. Bravehearts.org is the best place. My wife, in the meantime, who has been co-CEO of BraveHearts for the last like 17 years or whatever, long time, she is actually she's working on her doctoral in spiritual formation and leadership with an emphasis on in trauma and theology. And she is really taking a deep dive in the spiritual formation area,
Mm,
which we both have talked a lot about this, and we believe that this is going what the rough road that we go through that every leader in the industry says there will be a rough road. It's going to be unemployment. There's going to be people feeling
yeah.
like, what's there left for people to do when AI can do everything and all that. So we're going to go through some rough times. And we feel like that's going to create a lot of identity issues, a lot of like,
Yeah.
what's the purpose? What's the meaning in my life? And so the Center for Human Formation, I think these links are going to be in your show notes, but
They will.
that's also a faith-based organization, a new ministry that my wife is just starting up. And she's going to have more and more resources there. Not a lot there right now, but you can go in there and actually you can also go to Substack and sign up for look for the Center for Human Formation link to our Substack. And I'll give you a link to that. I don't think I
Yep.
sent
That
that to you
perfect.
earlier. Those are great resources to go to learn things, to learn stuff. Center for Human Formation, the whole idea there is to preserve human flourishing in the age of AI. And the way she's going to do that, she has an architecture she refers to as Rescue, RESQ, which stands for helping people improve their relational, emotional, and spiritual intelligence
Right.
in the age of artificial intelligence. So we're just launching that now. That's going to be for like if your thing is, hey, I don't really struggle with the sexual addiction thing, or I'm recovered in that, but there are other areas I'm interested in, or I really want to, I have a lot of people that I've worked with who have stopped acting out and all that, but now they really want to work on emotional connection with their spouse or, just relationships and all. That's going to be the place to go to. And eventually, I mean, we're doing some partnerships around that too. So those two places are going to be key. But be sure and get everyone should get the AI survival kit. That's going to be awesome. A lot of good resources.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for being with us. Those are amazing resources. I hope if you're listening, you go to those because this is a conversation that I think a lot of people aren't having, but we need to have it. We need to be aware.
Yes. Yes.
We need to be educated. We need to be on guard against all these things. So much of this is pulling us away from Christ, pulling us away from our identity in Him, our focus, our ministry, our testimony in the church. And so, Michael, I'm so grateful for what you and your wife do and the time you took to be with us today. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, and thank you guys for what you're doing. I can't believe it's been since 2020, I think, that we were first introduced.
Yep.
And it's always thrilling to me to see couples and individuals really stay plugged into this area of ministry. It's not easy, as you well know. There's a lot of tough things to go through, but this just shows me that you're really on God's plan. And your work is going to be more important going forward than it ever was with this. So I hope that people continue to turn to y'all for support. You're a great couple.
Michael.